Hi, I'm Tom Fournier, Brigadier General, Crown Forces North America, and I would like to discuss the 2026 Grand Tactical scheduled to be held at Fort Meigs in Perrysburg, Ohio. I have been meaning to create this video since Stony Creek, but then decided to wait and monitor the state of the world. I think it's safe to assume that we will not have a sense of normality when it comes to travel to the United States for some time now. I had traveled to the Fort Meigs 2025 event back in May to experience firsthand the border crossing, to see how many Canadians attended the event and learn of issues they may have had at the border, and also talk to the site staff and U.S. Command around the viability of having the Grand Tactical there in 2026, given Canadians' understandable reluctance to cross the U.S. border in the face of tariffs and threats to our sovereignty. I must admit to some trepidation as I was traveling to Fort Meigs. Should I have been going, or should I stand in solidarity with many other Canadians in terms of boycotting travel to the U.S.? I did feel it was my responsibility as your Brigadier General to put myself in a position to make an informed decision and recommendations around the Grand Tactical. The border crossing into the U.S. was remarkably easy. I experienced a minimum amount of questions or time at the border. As I arrived at Fort Meigs, I was struck by the warm welcome that comes with over 20 years of association and friendship with the many people there. Even as I parked in my car for the weekend, I encountered a dog walker who, seeing my Ontario license plate, made eye contact with me and gave me a hesitant but welcoming wave, even though we were strangers to each other. On the Saturday morning parade, I was pleased to see the Canadians who did brave the trip, including a contingent of staff from Old Fort Erie. No one had an issue with the border. Moreover, we had a number of Americans who portrayed British soldiers, so that gave us a section of 20 muskets. For Fort Meigs, it was a very strong turnout for the British. As the day wrapped up, after the site had provided supper, we went to the tavern where there was free libations and the traditional burning of the wheel. The wheel ceremony, more than anything, reflects the strong friendships and relationships we have with the American reenacting community. The many conversations I had with the public and American reenactors showed a deep appreciation for the Canadians who would travel to Fort Meigs to support a commemoration of that community's history, in spite of everything happening in our world at this time. Generally, they understood the strong feelings that Canadians have towards these surprising and unwarranted attacks on our country. I heard over and over again, we totally get it, but we cannot let politics affect our community and ruin our hobby. After a full day and a night of reflection, I transitioned from thinking the Grand Tactical was not possible to wanting to have conversations around how to make this work. Sunday morning, I asked, in terms of numbers of muskets, what does good look like? We settled on 40 to 50 muskets. How can we do this? If we can step up some of the Canadian participation modestly and then come equipped with spare uniforms to help Americans cross over, we felt that was very achievable. Our artillerists can access a sight gun and not have to travel with one of theirs. We also discussed a concern over losing the rhythm of grand tacticals. We took a pause this year to accommodate those traveling to the 210th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. If we miss next year due to concerns over Canadians crossing the border, that would mean coming into 2027 having had one Grand Tactical since 2019. We very much run a risk of no longer having elevated events in the form of Grand Tacticals. I have discussed all this with our Crown Forces staff and then the unit commanders at Stony Creek. On this basis, we made the decision to continue to plan for the 2026 Grand Tactical at Fort Meigs. We have committed to making a final decision after the Fort Erie event this year, realizing that even then, circumstances might change between Fort Erie this year and the Grand Tactical next spring that could preclude people from going. My ask at this time is merely to keep an open mind. Does it make sense to let down our American reenactor friends when it's the actions of a federal government that we're upset with? I fully understand many people will still not want to travel to the U.S., and that is a very personal and acceptable decision. As we get closer to the event, even if units are not attending, I ask they consider allowing individuals to go to the event. Typically at Fort Meigs, we create composite units and they operate as a cohesive and highly functional entity. Every single musket that we can encourage to attend makes our objective that much more attainable. I will be available at Fort George to discuss any concerns or answer questions around the Grand Tactical at Fort Meigs next spring. And then at Fort Erie, it is my hope that Colonel Martin Land of the U.S. Forces will join me so we can visit campfires and have conversations, answer your questions, and try to address your concerns. I very much hope people consider the 2026 Grand Tactical. For those who have never been, it's an incredible sight, quite unlike any that we typically play within. For those who have been before, we are planning new and fresh scenarios so as to give you a whole new Fort Meigs experience. At a Grand Tactical at Fort Meigs, we have the unique opportunity to see the numerous reenactors from Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana that seldom come to our mainstream events. Perhaps a reasonable Canadian showing will encourage more of them to come to Canadian events. If we can have some semblance of a Grand Tactical in 2026 at Fort Meigs, then we are setting the stage for a return to Canada with a Grand Tactical at Fort George in 2027. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and hopefully keeping an open mind.